What are those? Pixels evaluating drone altitude effects on vegetation and bare ground mapping variables in Xeric Landscapes. Hi, my name is Anton Rybakin, and I've had the privilege of working on this project with my mentor, Sarah Elizabeth Stockman, this past summer. We've been studying xeric grasslands, and what xeric grasslands are is just basically systems that are adapted to low water availability. And what grasslands kind of do is they play really vital roles in providing habitat. This one's for you, Sebastian. It's a little ground nesting bird that I found on the site. Really cool. They also provide water regulation because their roots are deep, and so they filter water out. They also, with their deep roots, what happens is they actually store carbon deep underground, and they're actually proven to actually store more carbon than actually trees do, just because trees will burn up and then release that carbon back into the air, whereas in roots actually keep that underground, so possibly reducing that. But according to the Colorado State Forest Service, they're reporting about due to climate change, and it's making these systems really vulnerable. In fact, there's about 80% losses of grasslands, and even I just couldn't even believe the statistics. There's about 99% loss of tall grass prairies. So we're seeing major impacts on these grasslands. So what we want to do is study them. So this summer, I joined a research lab working at a conservation site about 20 minutes south of Boulder. And the site is part of a drought manipulation experiment to help understand how grasslands respond to long-term stress. And so how we did this, it's a complicating process, but this project basically starts with a working theory. Drought may influence grasslands by changing the size and layout of vegetation and bare soil patches, and those are the little patches right there. So that's basically like grass. We have maybe a rock, soil. But the idea is, by analyzing these patterns, we hope to spot early signs of ecological change. And to do that, we need ultra detailed maps. Ones that can show us a blade of grass, but still cover large areas maybe 2 football fields or even bigger depending on the size. That's where drones come in. They quickly capture high resolution images, which we use to train a computer to basically color in each pixel. So think just like a coloring book, but basically we want the computer to do that for us rather than doing it by hand, which some of the team has been doing. And so these basically maps, or they're called segmented maps, blobs, help us track whether the ecosystem is staying resilient or it's maybe starting to collapse. And so basically my project aims to determine the optimal drone height for detecting patch level variables accurately, balancing resolution with identification efficiency. And just in simple terms, this just means different drone heights give us different resolutions. So we want to understand which flight height gives us the clearest, most reliable information that we can identify these variables at. Oh, never mind, there we go. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of an action. What do you think is in the red circle? Let's do a quick show of hands. A, vegetation. B, bare soil. C, rock. D, no clue at all. Okay, there you go. So the correct answer is B, bare soil. And here's a zoomed in version with the same marker that you can kind of see there, and that's the marker right here. That was tough, right? And that's exactly the kind of challenge we basically wanted to test out. That's what we had basically our participants do, is identify these areas, and they would kind of classify them into different variables. And so yeah, can participants correctly identify variables at different heights? If the objective is to get accurate maps, then we need to be able to train the models correctly pixel by pixel. And so, to answer that, we flew the drone at 6 different heights, ranging from 12 meters to about 50 meters. Each flight took anywhere from 2 minutes to about 11 minutes, depending on height. So you can kind of see the variance. If you fly lower, it takes a lot longer. And if you fly higher, it's very quick. Oh, that one was, sorry. Yeah, all right. Anyway, so yeah, we recorded those images in RGB, so visible light. And in this image, sorry, I kind of went on to the wrong one. As you can see, the images get blurrier as height increases. So this one starts at about 12 meters, really nice and accurate. But then the further you get out, the less it becomes clear. and then it gets to the point at about 50 meters where it becomes really difficult to try to see what basically variables are around this marker. So just to kind of show you what people have to kind of work with or what we're working at different heights. And so we focused on 4 main variables to identify. Here we have living vegetation, so we have some tall grasses, some short grasses, we have forbs, which are just flowers, cacti, we also have dead litter, which is basically last year's growth from the previous year. And then also we have bare soil and rock, and what actually makes the site actually really unique is it's considered cobbly, or basically there's a lot of rock, which isn't really normal with these kind of landscapes. And so how do we know if we identified the variables correctly? So what we have to do is basically have control points. And so what we did is, here's our little control point that you saw earlier. This one's a circular one. And so we had to record data on the ground in these transects. And so it basically matches up this. So we basically recorded all the variables that ran along this line from 0 to 10 centimeters. And then we used that ground truth against people that participated, so then we can know were they identifying things correctly or were they misidentifying things. And so kind of getting into the results, this graph shows classification accuracy. The y-axis the y-axis is the accuracy, ranging from about 40% to about 80%. And then the x-axis goes from the 12 to the 50 meters. So each single one is the different elevation. And so what we found is accuracy declines with height. I mean, that should be, hopefully was going to be obvious. But the best results clustered between 12 to about 20 meters. I mean, you can see it change about 1%. So if we just look at height alone, that's kind of where the best accuracy is, suggesting this is the optimal height, but that's only if we look at by elevation. However, if we start actually then kind of diving a little bit deeper, again, the y-axis is classification error accuracy, and then the x-axis then now splits everything into like the variables, live vegetation, dead litter, bare soil, and rock, and then each graph is actually about, is the different heights. So now we have it by height, variables, and everything. So if we look into this, it gives us a little bit different picture. So live vegetation was the most consistent overall, while dead litter, which was the past, like dead grass from last year, actually performed the worst. And even oddly enough, it was actually misidentified the most, even at the lowest elevation. So we weren't even able to tell that at 12 meters. And bare soil kind of ranged. It actually did pretty good, and it actually increased the higher we went. And we also included rock, but rock only represented 1 out of the 44 variables we basically like recorded. So unfortunately, it wasn't very reliable. But even with the little data we do know, people either like identified it, or they identified it, or they completely misidentified it. So they weren't able to identify the rock whatsoever. So that kind of gives us some interesting results. And finally, we compared experts, those who worked on the project and those who did not work on the project. Here you can see experts performed better overall. Just besides a few kind of categories, they performed pretty decently with bare soil. However, something interesting that popped up is that non-experts really identified dead litter well, while experts did not. And so we're thinking that maybe experts were overanalyzing it. So, because then they were looking at maybe even like more kind of data they were trying to overlook. So, but anyway, those are kind of like some of the interesting points that we found, which leads us, so what did we learn? 12 to 20 meter flights gave us the best accuracy if we look by height only, but lower heights mean more flight time, battery use, and potential wildlife disturbance. So we can disturb those ground nesting birds, and there's a lot of rare ones there. Some classes were simply hard to identify, especially dead litter and rock. These results do tell us, though, there's no one-size-fits-all flight, or basically flight height. Observer variability is real, and training can help. To improve model accuracy, we need to standardize training. And for future works, looking forward, analyze which variables were most often confused with other variables. Add rock, and we actually had another variable that we were identifying in different tests, cow patty, basically cow poop, categories to ensure they are fairly represented here. and explore different drone maybe angles like tilted or oblique shots, maybe to improve boundary detection or other things here. Kind of summarize everything. Our goal was to identify optimal drone height to map vegetation and bare soil in vulnerable grasslands. Why? Patch size helps us to spot changes occurring in these systems and to understand if desertification processes are occurring. What we tested, different 6 heights using ground truths and participant classification. Kind of the keys, 12 to 15 give us the highest accuracy, but results may vary based on observer, cover type, leading to trade-offs being made. And to kind of conclude, this work supports better model training to track ecological change over time. And just wanted to do some acknowledgements. If you want to access my contact information, references, and acknowledgements further, there's the cue card. Thank you.